Now, originally we were going to talk about levels of anxiety and anger that have been unleashed in people ever since the pandemic. People feel helpless. They don't know what to do or how to behave. Their life has been disrupted. Many people lost jobs. Other people had to quit jobs to take care of children because there was no daycare, and on and on and on. And then a whole lot of people got very, very sick and died. And that, my dear friends, is very disruptive. Humans being what they are, they polarized around all of it because that's kind of been the way it's done. That's a very Piscean tactic. And you see, it is this old idea of divide and conquer. And it's an interesting thing because it can be very effective. It can also be lethal. But the whole driving idea behind it is might makes right. And I think the world has stopped seeing, oh, is it here we go again? And feeling the paralysis of each person who really cares but can't personally do anything about it. You know, no one of you can go stop this thing. It's a fiasco. It's crazy. And it's deadly. But what you can do is come together and hold a bigger picture. Now, some of you know that we have started a mantra campaign on behalf of Ukraine. We did one on behalf of Yemen as well, different mantra. But when you look at the world and you see how much need there is, sometimes when you have nothing you can go do physically to change the events that are occurring, you have to work on different levels. And it's very important to engage the archetypal level and the spiritual level as much as you can, because there is a great deal of power that is there. Now, in chanting a mantra together, everyone's minds are focused in a certain direction. And that's what's so powerful, my friends. You see, most people have no idea of the power of their minds because they've been taught or they've willingly accepted that they're weak, they're helpless, they're no match for what's going on in the world, or maybe even in the family dynamics. There are many ways that these Piscean notions of power over have imprinted themselves or have forcibly been imprinted on the psyches of many, many, many people. It's a global phenomenon. And this is what we are trying to transcend, actually cut through. And we need new energies to do that. Fortunately, the world is now receiving a lot of something called the seventh ray energy. And that is the energy that will sort of guide the world, just as sixth ray energy guided it in the Piscean era. Unfortunately, humanity did not use that energy very well. It got subverted to this idea of taking power over, and everything was seen along hierarchical lines. The one at the top has all the power. Those at the bottom have no power. And we can look at this and say it's just not right. Now, it's one thing if the people at the top are what are called the beneficent leaders who really care about the people that they're in charge of. But if you look at most nations now, all political people, the incumbent in offices, are drawing a lot of criticism. Some of it rightly so, but a lot of it is just diversionary tactics, kind of like Russia is doing. It disrupts the normal flow of things. Now, the normal flow, this is not to say the normal flow is always the best flow, but it is what you have. And it does at least keep for some kind of smoothness. But you see, part of Russia's disruption happened, it's happened in elections all around the world. They're very good at cyber attacks. And they're very good at putting out a lot of misinformation, which many people believe. And that's not what this talk is about today. But if you can understand the nature of disruption, what a powerful tool it is. It certainly has been used by people in North America. That whole onslaught on the Capitol was an attempt to disrupt. Oh, I know people were very polarized, and but the good news is some of that has fallen away with the immediacy of the crisis now arising in Europe. And if we can take this and use this as a level of healing, then, my friends, you will have used this time well. You will have used the energy well. It's not pretty right now. And those who had so much anxiety coming out of COVID may even have more anxiety now. And this is really the tricky part. You listen to people who seem wise, who say, well, you just have to drop your anxiety. Now, in the end, that is what has to happen, but most people can't do that. Anxiety is something that gets in the mind and kind of takes over. So does anger. And partly this is because of the way the human organism is built. You see, you really have two brains. And then here in the West, we talk about the left brain and the right brain. And that may not give you a full understanding of what's going on. But the brain puts out these nerves, it goes through all the body, and all of them terminate in the hands and fingers or in the feet. In the East, we speak of Ida and Pingala, which are the channels that carry the subtle energy to the right and the left. And you see, when you think about it, it's not exactly the same, but there are some similarities in understanding what this human system is. Those of you that have really delved into my teachings in the Matter of Mind book know that I gave you some new language. We talk about ego mind and essence mind, and that may be a little bit more helpful for what's going on today. But the part of it is if you go back and look at the early Homo sapiens, the corpus callosum, which is that little strip that hooks together the right and left brains, wasn't really functional all that well early on. Certainly not if we go back to the age of Taurus. The age of the Aryan age, it began to kind of come together in a more functional way. But you go earlier, people had a right brain and a left brain, and they didn't communicate that much. And so you have this very interesting things where you go back to the age of Hammurabi, the age of the great lawgivers, where people were using what is essentially the right brain, and they were receiving information, whether it was Moses going up the hill and getting the 10 Commandments, he received something via the right brain. The left brain was used to engage in war, to count to do all of the analytical stuff and so on, but it was really, people had two brains. Even though they had been trying to come together for probably the past 35,000 years. Because that's when the ego started to develop, when humans began to see the difference between me and everybody else. Prior to that, there wasn't that much, it just wasn't a thing. People, it wasn't that they couldn't tell that you had a body over there and I have a body here. It wasn't like that. It was like there was no meaning put on all of that, you see. So if we look at the evolution of consciousness coming up to now you have brains or you have energy systems that cross over. And in the East, one of the ways to greet people is you put your hands together like this. Now think about this. You put the hands together, and if we're talking about the nerves or we're talking about the subtle channels, they come together because they both terminate in the fingertips. So this is one way of unifying the system. And one of the great ways for dealing with anxiety is to just put your hands together like this. And then think of something you love. Could be a person. It could be a beautiful sunset. It could be little squirrels running along, chasing each other in a tree. But you think of something that is beautiful, precious to you. And you just think on that for a little while. You keep your hands together like this. You're bringing together the right and left sides. And there's a kind of balance that begins to happen. And that balance is really important because it's when people come out of balance, their selves are not integrated, that anxiety takes over, that anger takes over. And so this is not just a way to greet people. I mean, it is. And in the West, you see somebody from the East bowing like this, and you say, oh, that's, in the West, you define everything. So that means the God in me salutes the God in you. And that's a good thing to hold. But it's also about bringing myself as a whole being with both levels of my brain, with both subtle energy channels coming together, finding unity. You see, if more people in the world ran around with their hands touching together like this, the world would just not be a place that could host a takeover such as happening right now in Europe. Oh, I know this seems like a simple, it's not a fix in some, I'm sorry, I pick up on people's thoughts. It's not a fix, no. It is an integration for you. It's how each of you can learn to be integrated, can be a whole being. It starts with your thoughts. And so you bring together your right and left sides and you think about something you love or something that is beautiful or something that is good. And as you hold those thoughts, the anxiety melts. The fear goes away, the anger goes away in that moment. Now, because you have two minds, ego mind and essence mind, the ego likes to, what do you call it? Get a rise, I think is the American phrase, get a rise out of you, which is to say, pull you off balance. You become emotionally reactive. And there's nothing wrong with emotions. Absolutely nothing wrong with them. You don't want them to rule you. But it's not that you want to be emotionless. That's what you have sitting in the Kremlin right now with his fingers on buttons. Someone who has no ability to emotionally connect with other people. And I'm not saying this to put him down. I'm saying this to give you an idea that those of you who think feelings aren't worth anything, you're wrong. You need them. So this is a really powerful time for the whole world. How will it respond? How will it come together? Or will it? Will it be divided again into another and very tragic Third World War? That's a possibility. But as long as your leaders are really hanging clearly together and are really emphasizing the we, other options are possible. And so we start this mantra campaign because when you're saying the mantra, and it's, Om Shri Hanumate Namaha. Om meaning greeting to the gods or greeting from my essence to your essence to the divine. In this case, Shri means Lord. Hanumate is the word for Hanuman, Lord Hanuman, who is often the one sought when one wants to get rid of the evil influences or the negative influences in their life. That's why I requested that you use this particular mantra. And then Namaha is a giving over of my will to divine will. And so every time you thoughtfully say the mantra, you join with all the others who are beginning this mantra campaign. And that creates kind of a vortex of the we. And I think on the website, we presented a map of certainly Ukraine, showing where Russia's borders are, but all these little nations around it who are equally subject to similar invasions. Because in Ukraine, Russia's waging kind of a ground war. But it won't do that if it goes to the next level with the rest of the world. It will do it another way. And thus it is really important that, in a sense, the whole world put its hands together and greet one another from a holistic standpoint, a holistic place where you recognize you're all brothers and sisters. And that, you get up in the air, you look down, there are no boundaries really. Oh, yes, China has the Great Wall, yes. But when you're up in the air, in fact, some of the Ukrainian soldiers, or excuse me, the Russian soldiers didn't even know. They were following orders. They didn't even know their tanks had gone into Ukraine because there's no natural border marking there. And that's a good lesson, I think, from which to draw. Can we come together? Can we hold the energy of a great and powerful we that says no to violence? Oh, we're not there yet, clearly. But I do see some good signs happening as a result of this terrible, terrible event. And I think there will be more measures taken. But just know, there are no easy answers. It might be if one side was really ready to engage in meaningful dialogue. What the dialogue produced that has happened between the officials from Ukraine and the officials from Russia was a ceasefire, which Russia purposefully broke. So it's a very intense time. So you have to be whole. Frankly, you won't face it so well if you're not whole, if you're scattered and your one side doesn't know what your other side is doing, or if your ego mind becomes too far separated from your essence mind, then you will just cave into that anxiety, that anger, that depression for some. You have to do something about it because you don't control what Mr. Putin does. You don't control the damage that is happening in the area that is being sieged right now. What you can do is enter that archetypal realm and mobilize the power that is there. The archetype we're using is the god Hanuman, because he's well known for getting rid of evil. So you participate in that. You make a connection with Lord Hanuman. And you put your wishes for a better reality into this energy flow. It's an archetypal energy. You see, very powerful wars have been waged at the archetypal level. It's just that most people today aren't aware of them. Others are. I mean, there are still indigenous cultures that are very aware of the energy wars that go on. And culture to culture, they differ somewhat, but they are still very powerful. And so we want to enter that realm, not to do negative battle or to hurt, but to say that something better, something cleaner, something more rarefied is possible for this planet. And it's based in love rather than hate.